Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Librarians Teach Live. We have a very special live video coming to you today.
Yes, and I'm Carrie White from Library Learners, and I'm excited to be here with Colette J. and also with Lee Colazzo, also known as Mrs. ReaderPants. So we're really excited to get to visit with her today and talk about some of her experience as a librarian overseas. So as we talk, if you have a question, go ahead and put that in a comment and we'll pull it in and ask that question because there are probably things you thought of that we didn't think to ask. So my first question, Lee, is just generally about your library journey. How did you decide to become a school librarian?
All right. So I love being a school librarian. It is truly, truly the best job in the whole school. I know we all feel that way, even as frustrating as sometimes things can get. It was in my very first year of teaching, which was in 2001. I had seventh graders. I was teaching English, and in the second week of school, I took my students to our school library for their orientation. And I was in Texas, so the librarian talked about the Lone Star reading list and just stuff in the library. And while I was sitting there listening to her, I can distinctly remember thinking, I want her job. How do I get her job? And so while my students were checking out that day, I actually asked her, what do I need to do? Like, it just seems like people just magically fall into this librarian position. So what do I need to do to be in the school library? And she was wonderful, and she talked me through it. She ended up being my mentor librarian at University of North Texas. And yeah, and the rest is history. I taught for 3 years, worked on my master's, and then I got a job in another school district at an elementary school. Actually, I was teaching middle, but I got a job in elementary, and it was a brand new school, and I was pregnant with my son, and first library job, and oh, it was insane.
Yes.
So yeah, it's been great.
How long were you teaching at that elementary school then?
I was at that school for 4 years, maybe 5. I had both my sons there. And then I went to, that district was kind of far from my home. So there was an elementary school opening closer to my home. So I applied there. It was also a new school, and I got that job. And I only worked there for 1 year because they opened a middle school the next year, and I ended up going to the middle school, which was kind of what I always wanted to go back to. I love middle school. Everybody has their certain thing that they really love. For me, that is middle school, and seventh grade is definitely the sweet spot for me. But that 1 year that I was at that elementary school, I was on the specials rotation, and I went into it pretty open-minded. I knew that there were a lot of librarians that did not like being on special rotation, and it comes with its own issues. But I went into it pretty open-minded, but man, y'all, special librarians.
It's intense, isn't it? Those of us in elementary have been doing it for a long time. It's intense.
Yeah, I will say that it's my hardest year. I've been in education for 18 years now, and I still say that 1 year, 2008, 2009, was the hardest of all the years by a whole lot, including when I had a school that I wasn't really thrilled with the administration there. It was harder even than that. That specials schedule is just, it's insane. I don't know how you do it. 1 year, and I was like, this is not so a lot of my like my digital bulletin boards and my Storytimes and library lessons, I keep the ones for elementary. I keep those specials librarians in mind because these are the lessons that I would want when I was a specials librarian. It's tough. You just don't have any time.
So I know from knowing you professionally before that you have not only taught in the United States, but you've also taught internationally, starting in China. How did you choose to make that move to teach internationally?
Right. So pretty much everyone we knew thought we were insane when we started talking about it. I'm married. My husband's also a teacher. He teaches computer science and math. And we have 2 boys. And at the time, that we actually moved to China, they were 7 and 9. But prior to that, for a couple of years, we had been talking about wanting some kind of adventure. We wanted our kids to see more of the US and more of the world than they were seeing. But we never had enough money to really travel a whole lot. We're both teachers. We would go to places like close by. We really didn't go a lot of places because we couldn't afford it. And so we had some friends. Well, we were talking about doing Department of Defense schools initially. My dad is retired from the Navy, so and Chris's dad is also a military guy. So anyway, we were going to do that initially, and then we had some friends that were. It was the band teacher at our school. We were both teaching at the same middle school. He got a job in South Korea. And my husband and I were both like, ooh, what's that about? And, yeah, it just sounded so exciting. So they went and we kept in touch with them. And it was probably just a few months after they left. The hiring process is quite long. I was hired in November for a position the next school year. So it's quite late. There's a lot of things to do with, you have to do visas, you can imagine, a lot of paperwork. Our kids had to have a lot of paperwork as well. They had to have school records. They had to take admissions test to the school that they were going to go to my school in China. So anyway, they were in Korea and we kept in touch with them, and the pay is quite good internationally, and that was a big motivator. The health insurance benefits are just like significantly better than teachers in Texas get. I know it depends on where you are in the U.S., but in Texas, health insurance is quite pricey for a family of 4 with 2 teachers. So yeah, we went to China. So we just started applying. We didn't have China specifically in mind. We were just pretty like, let's just see where the wind takes us. And we were looking at a school in Chile. And a lot of people were telling us, don't discount the Middle East. That's great there. So we were open to places like Dubai. And anyway, we ultimately were hired in Suzhou, China, which is about 30 minutes on the bullet train from Shanghai. So it's quite close to Shanghai. And Suzhou is beautiful, and it's been a great adventure. We were there 6 years, and the pandemic brought all that crashing to a halt. We came over Chinese New Year in 2020. It was January 21st was the day we left China to come to Mexico, and we were just going to have a nice little family vacation for Chinese New Year. We were staying here 3 weeks. And my dad came down, and my husband's mother came down, and we just all had a nice time. Well, 2 days after we got here, Wuhan was shut down for the pandemic, and we were unable to return. And we didn't know when we were going to be able to return. So ultimately, it was quite a while. We decided if we could we have 2 dogs that were in boarding in Shanghai, and we thought if we could get them out, which we didn't think would be possible, we would stay in Mexico. And that happened. It was a lot of effort from a whole team of people to get the dogs out of China. It's quite expensive. But ultimately, the dogs are here and they're fine. And so we've gotten residency in Mexico now and been here 2 years. And we love it.
Wow. Yeah. What an amazing story of I know we all have our pandemic stories. Right. I love that about your dogs, that hey, we need to get dogs with us so that we can move forward. And that warms my heart so much.
We can't leave our babies behind. And our kids, that's another thing, is they've been in China 6 years. We moved there when they were 7 and 9. And when we came here, they would have been 13 and 15, which is really hard time socially for them to just they couldn't even say goodbye to their friends, or they just one day weren't there anymore. But they've been really resilient. They've done great. We talked about going back to the US when we first got stuck here, and it's just really expensive in the US, much cheaper in Mexico. So we've stayed here, and but they've been great. They've been very resilient. They're now learning Spanish, and a whole different language for them. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I'm curious. I know COVID is kind of its own ball of wax, if you'd say, but aside from that, before that happened, what would you say are the pros and cons of working as a librarian overseas?
Right. So the pros, there are a lot of pros. I feel like I learned and grew, even though I had already been in the library for 10 years when I went to China, and I had 3 years prior to that teaching 7th grade. I did not really, that meant nothing. I mean, it meant something, but it meant very little when I got to China. It was all very different. So I feel like I grew a lot as a librarian. There were different challenges. I learned a lot about cultivating a collection that was really global instead of like in the US, you have a diverse collection, right? But they're still all in English for the most part. You may have some small Spanish collection, or, we had at one of my school districts in Texas, we had a Hmong collection. But most of the part, it's English and just small collections. But when you are a global librarian, we had 55 nationalities at my school, and that would be a lot of different languages that students are reading in, and some of them, they have varying English levels. So you need to have something for everybody. So that was really interesting to learn a lot more about how to get those materials, because getting books into China is also a challenge with it's just a challenge to get books from outside of China in there. They have to go through customs, and they take quite a long time. So I do feel like I grew in that way. The money is excellent. If you're thinking about going overseas, you get to travel a lot because you have the money to do it, because the pay is so much better. Health insurance is fantastic. And I felt like medical care in China was just as good as it is in the US. And it was easy to access. Our school paid, we had 0 premium for our insurance and 0 deductible. So just go to the hospital and do what you need to do. I know it's crazy to think about being from the US, the health insurance. And then the pay was, it was just a little more than I made in the US, but our housing was covered. So we didn't have any housing. We didn't need a car in Shanghai or in Suzhou. There's really good public transportation with the buses and the trains. Very easy to get, and very walkable. So you don't have that. You don't have to do car insurance. So it's very much a great way to save money. And if you want to travel, my kids have been all over Asia. So we've gone every year. We went a couple of times to different countries. So, and then not to mention around China. We've also been around China. So that's a huge benefit. Drawbacks, it's not easy. It's a lot of work. You're going to work probably more hours in a week than you work in the US. And I will say on that note, you do have assistants in the library. Like when I was in the US, all my schools, it was just me. I had one school, it was 1,000 students, and I got a part-time aide because this was elementary. We had 1,000 students, so she had 18 hours a week. And then at another school, my middle school that I was at, we had aides when I started there, full-time library aide, but she's pulled to sub quite often. You know the story. It's just the same everywhere. Anyway, ultimately her position got cut, and then it was back to just me. So in China, we had, I had 2 schools in China. Both of them had around 800 students from pre-K through 12. And I had another fully certified librarian that was full-time, me. And then we had a library intern at one of the schools that was full-time that we hired from. She was a library student in the US at University of North Texas, where I went. So she worked full-time in the library, and we had 2 full-time Chinese library assistants who were fantastic.
Wow.
5
That's
full-timers.
incredible.
That's awesome.
And both of my schools had that. We both had 5 people. We didn't have the intern at my second school, but we had a 3rd Chinese library assistant. So and they were all full-time. So that was really great. And the budget is awesome. You get just pretty much, because it's so expensive to get books into China anyway. But when I would go home to the US, I would just like buy a bunch of books, and then it's cheaper, so I can make my budget go a little farther as well. So, okay, drawbacks. Yeah, you work very, very hard. You have a lot of, not a lot, but you have some like Saturdays and nighttime events that you have to go to. It's probably no more than it was in the US for me. Sometimes the school administrators are not teachers, and sometimes they were and sometimes they weren't. So they didn't always understand. Like, they're run like a business, and if the student body is like, if there's fewer students applying, then the administrators will ramp up their efforts to get more students there. But it can be really difficult working with administrators that are not library certified, not teacher certified. They've never been teachers, and they certainly don't always understand library. You also experienced that in the US as well. So I don't know, there's not a lot of drawbacks. You're away from your family. But I had my immediate family with me, but I was away from my mom and my sisters. I don't know. Mostly it was great. We really enjoyed it. It was such a great opportunity for the boys to experience a lot of other cultures. They know that not everybody speaks English, and they're really patient with people trying to learn. They're trying to learn too, so they really understand that. I think they just had a really good experience, and they're super resilient. That's been the main thing. They just go roll with it.
You're making me want to travel and apply to school library jobs overseas.
It's actually a great time. If anybody that's watching is interested in working internationally, international library, you are welcome to email me. I will be like totally upfront and honest about whatever questions you have, but it is a really great opportunity. And I know we thought about it for a long time before we actually made the jump. And even after we were hired and we were like working on selling, you have to sell everything. You can't take it with you. So we were working on selling our house and our cars. We called it Operation Get Rid of All Our Keys, because we got rid of our school keys and our car keys and our house keys. So, but that's a lot of work. But we had been thinking about that a long time before. And even when we did all that, there were times that, and my husband would say the same thing, we would wake up in the middle of the night and just be like, what are we doing? I can't believe, why are we doing this? This is a craziness. And people around you think you're crazy. We had another friend that told us, well, I didn't think you'd actually do it. It's like, it just kind of starts rolling once you're hired. And it is really scary. So if anybody out there is in a situation where you're thinking about it, I encourage you to look into it. There are websites that you can use. We used a site called Search Associates that is one of the big ones for looking, like a headhunter type of site, looking for teachers and librarians and principals, and they hire IT people through sites like that. And there's a lot of jobs out there right now with the pandemic. It is, a lot of people are going home.
It sounds like recruiting too. Like I think we're seeing a ramp up of recruiters in the US of that their only job is to fill positions in schools or elsewhere.
Yeah, that's true.
They're reaching out to anybody on LinkedIn or wherever to cold emails to see who's interested. So it sounds similar to that a little bit.
Right, but the experience was wonderful. If you're looking for an adventure, and I felt like our kids were a really good age when we left at 9 and 7. They were not little babies, but they were not old enough to have some serious attachments with friends at school just yet. And that was what was hard about coming here, is that they did. And they still talk to them online and stuff, but it's just not the same. So.
So when you said you're living in Mexico right now, is where you've sort of landed. What's that like, besides time difference, talking to relatives in China or friends in China and relatives in the US? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I do still keep up with a lot of friends in China. Shanghai, if you've been watching the news, has had a really hard time lately. I have some friends in lockdown currently in Shanghai right now. It is as bad as it sounds. But it's nice being on the same time zone as my family. I'm on Central Time Zone now, and we go back and forth because of the daylight saving time they don't have in this area.
Oh, yeah.
Some parts of
Okay.
Mexico do, but ours does not. So sometimes we're Eastern time, and right now we're Central. But it's really nice being on the same time zone as my family. It's easy flight. I'm going to Florida to visit my dad in like less than 2 weeks. And it's just a couple of hours flight. It's not bad. So that's really nice. We love it here. The weather's beautiful. People are friendly and kind. I feel like there's a lot of good community feeling here. We're in a very small town. So we were in a larger city, and that was fine, but we are really happy in the nature. We see a lot of interesting wildlife. We see iguanas, really big ones. And my husband was followed home the other day by a spider monkey. Just,
Oh, when you said followed home, I was like, is this going to turn dark? But okay.
They stay in the jungle mostly, but we've seen them a couple of times. So there's that, and we see these little cute animals. They look kind of like, what are those? I can't think of the name. But they look kind of like a beaver without a tail. They're little rodents, but they're called agouti, and they're super cute, and they're always like in little groups. So we see those a lot. There are lots of cool wildlife. We walk everywhere. Still don't need a car. I don't feel like I'll never buy a car again. I don't want a car.
Wow.
We'll just live somewhere where we can walk.
Money, yeah.
Right. We can walk everywhere. Our dogs are really happy. Lots of little things to chase. So,
oh my goodness.
we have a yard. We didn't have a yard in China. We were in an apartment.
Yeah.
Shanghai is huge. So yeah, it's beautiful
lovely.
and it's great, and it's great community. Spanish is a lot easier to learn than Chinese also.
Oh, yeah.
Still not easy, but easier than Chinese was. So
That's wonderful. And I know we've got several of your products on the Librarians Teach website in our store, and a couple of them, the digital Storytimes and the digital bulletin boards. I wonder if you'd tell us more about those, how you envision people using those, and so on.
Okay. So we'll start with the digital bulletin boards, or the Storytimes. The Storytimes are for younger library patrons. They're for like pre-K through 2, and it just depends on what the topic is. I don't always go into it with an idea of like, this is going to be for K through 2. I just create it, and then I'll look at it after I'm done and say, all right, this is fine for pre-K. Or maybe I'll adjust it so that it'll be okay for pre-K, because the text may be a little bit dense for pre-K sometimes. So anyway, those are for, I always keep specials librarians in mind when I'm creating the Storytimes and the library lessons, because they're the lessons I would have wanted when I was there. They're kind of how I did it when I was on the specials rotation. I would have a PowerPoint behind me, and I would have a clicker, and we would just kind of sit and chat about the topics. So like I just did an update on one, this is one of the lessons, which was for the older like grades. I think this one's 2 through 5. I did one on summertime. And so it goes through the benefits of summer reading in the summer and what kids will get out of that. So the lesson would be like the librarian would play it right here and just talk through the slides. So the slides are actually not just for the kids to sit and read, but they're for the librarian to kind of guide the librarian on a lesson about the benefits of summer reading. And then the second part, because I know how crazy checkout can get when you're trying to check out books and there's 30 students in the library. The second part is I intend them to be scrolled on a screen. So I've got instructions in there about how to set a timer, set the slides to change after like 20 or 30 seconds. And then I have scavenger hunts that go with them that are things that they look for in the scrolling slides. So like the one I just did, the summer lesson was I had like, they have to find a starfish, or it's kind of like, I mean, it's not as hard as I Spy, but they're looking for little things. And there's two versions of the scavenger hunt. There's one that's just pictures for the younger students. And I always say, just let your students choose which one they want, because they might want to do the other one. But the one with pictures is just, they're just looking for those pictures. So they're looking for like a starfish, a strawberry, a coconut, whatever they're looking for, a sunshine. But then the other one, this also comes with the same lesson, is it's like questions that go with some of the scrolling slides. So like there's the starfish one, for example, is a very close-up photo of a starfish. And they have to say, what is this? What do you think this is? Really, really close. And then it goes through and then it backs up and it says, it's a starfish. And then there's facts about it. So there's a lot of different things. I've got would you rathers in there. I've got this or that. I've got trivia questions. It's just fun stuff for the students to learn something while they're, instead of just running around crazy while they're checking out. Although I'm sure some will still do that. Right. So the story times are for the younger students, pre-K through 1 or 2. And then the lessons, the library lessons, are for 2 through maybe 6, just depending on what the content is. Then the digital bulletin boards are for secondary. And those are actually things that I used when I was at middle school and high school in China, because I was 6 through 12. And I just we had so many events going on at the school. International schools are insane with the, right? I mean, even in the US, there's a lot of events happening. So I wanted a way to advertise events. And I thought I can let certain clubs at school make a slide, and I could put some books on there and advertise the books, and I could put some fun facts and things. So that's kind of how it started. And I would just add to it. I had one, when I first started doing it, with just one gigantic show that I would play, this day in history and all this stuff. And it got to be 116 slides. And it took 40 minutes to scroll. And it was just a lot to keep up with. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if somebody made this for me? Oh, well, I'm going to make it. And they're not 116 slides. They're usually around 30 to 40 slides. And they're just interesting little facts you can fill in. There's some of the slides are templates that you can fill in, things like your library schedule for the week, because that was always a question. Can we come in at this time? And your birthdays for your students. They love seeing their name in lights, their birthday. Things like that. You can have clubs at your school do a slide, whatever works for you. You can add whatever you want to it. But so that's the digital bulletin boards, and those are just for they're seasonal too. So mostly. So I've got one for Red Ribbon Week as drug and alcohol awareness. So all the slides in that presentation deal with drug and alcohol awareness and trivia questions and fun facts and all that. So
I do want to just jump in here real quick and say that while we are working to get more of Lee's things in, we have definitely more of her story times. We have a lot of her digital story times in the shop. And I just posted 2 links because Lee mentioned the summer reading library lesson. So I put the link there in the comments just a few minutes ago. And then when you started talking about digital bulletin boards, I know the one we have in the shop now, and we're adding more, is the Science of Spring digital bulletin board.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Which, yes, is intended for, it's labeled in the shop as grades 3 through 6. But certainly, yeah, it does sound more like you said, secondary, that you could push it up a little higher to make announcements.
Right. I'm actually, I update. I am the update queen, as you know. I love to update myself. I learn more all the time. And then I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I could do this. Mm-hmm. So I've been really working on a lot of updates for the last year or so. And one of the things I'm doing in the updates is the younger digital bulletin boards that are grades 3 through 7, I'm actually converting those so they have a lesson with them. So they're the lessons. So that one hasn't been converted yet. No telling, could happen any day.
It's okay, we'll get to it.
Constantly. So I always send them to Librarians Teach and they upload them. So you'll have the update. So anyway, if you want it as a digital bulletin board, download it soon. I always have
not any pressure on you. That was just to give an example. For any folks that are watching who want to see kind of what this all looks like, or what the contents of one of those might look like, there's just 2 links there that you can check out. And so, yeah.
Yes, and we know we've got a lot of burdens this year, especially with dealing with social emotional issues, and this type of product can really save you lesson planning time because it's all right there on the screen. You don't have to remember what to do next. You don't have to get, glue sticks and paint and scissors and all of that. Just plug and play, plug and teach.
Yeah.
Well, and with the
we
updates,
appreciate
I'm adding a lesson plan template in there that's pre-filled with the AASL and the TEKS for Texas and Common Core standards for the lesson. So those are coming with the updates. A lot of them already have them, but there's already a lesson plan with them, but I wanted to have something really detailed with that you could print and just turn in. If you have to turn in a lesson plan to your principal, this has got all the standard, like the first page of the lesson plan is standards. And sometimes there's quite a few.
And I can attest they are very thorough too, as the person I'm the person, if for folks that don't know, that like get stuff into the marketplace a lot. I have some help, but when I'm looking things over, yes, your lesson plans are, I would totally feel comfortable saying to my principal, here's my lesson plan,
Right.
ta-da, and I don't need to change anything about it. Like
Right. Kind of
they are
argue
editable.
standards.
Yeah, editable, but you don't have to.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, they are. I think that's a really useful thing about those products. So Lee, I have to say one of your products that I use and have used for a couple of years now is the genre personality quiz. And I have to say also that it has to be one of the most popular products on the Librarians Teach marketplace. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so the genre personality was born in about 2010. I've been using it for a long time, but it looked nothing like what it looks like now. I have updated it more than once a year. I now try to keep my updates to just in June. I do update it every June, but for a while there, I just kept coming up with more ideas, so I'd add and add and add. That's why it's so long. But what it is when we genrefied my middle school library in 2010 in Texas. And when we did that, genreification was not this huge thing like it is now. I had gone to a workshop and somebody had presented on it and I had never heard of it. And I remember she got a standing ovation. There were people, it was just like a small workshop, like a education service center we had in our area. And they did these librarian things where anybody, like any librarian I have presented at them as well. Anyway, that's what it was. And the room was meant to hold like 30 people. And there were people, I was one of them, sitting on the floor, like we were just all piled up. And at the end, so this was this new concept of genreification and never heard of it. I don't think many of the people in the room had. She got a standing ovation at the end. It was just amazing. And I came back all energized to do it. And my principal, she was always behind me, so she said, go for it. So I did. So in order to introduce that to the kids, I did this genre personality test where different genre are part of a larger genre personality. So for example, one of the genre personalities is the questioner. So this one was intended to go with mystery, but it also works for other genre as well. So it's just a profile of like the questioner or the escapist or the innovator. It's just a profile of what those traits of somebody who would like that genre would be, right? So I kind of did it in reverse rather than saying, oh, you might like this genre. It's, oh, this genre goes with this kind of reader. And this has been tweaked many, many, many times because I have students, they're all based on multiple real students. So, and I have on my blog, there's actually profiles of, the names are not their real names, but there's profiles of those students that I base those on. And each genre personality has like 3 or 4 students that I talk about that they're based on. There's actually more than that. Because they do tend to have, the kids that like fantasy, really high epic fantasy, tend to have these certain traits in common, and they could be friends, right? So, that's kind of nice too. If you say, well, you're an escapist, and look, oh my gosh, these other 3 people are escapists too. Maybe you guys can like share books. So anyway, it just kind of grew from there. So it started with 8 personalities. It currently has 12. I actually have 3 more in mind. One that I really want to do is the maker. I really want to do a new one for them, like for people who like cooking and fashion and crocheting. And there's always a lot of kids that like building stuff and making stuff. But I don't, there's 12. And I already, like, in order to do the 3 that I added a couple of years ago, I needed to delete one. So I deleted the history buff and kind of incorporated into some of the other personalities. But to add more, I think the lesson's just going to be too long. So I'm not really sure what to do about that. If I should add more and just say you can delete the ones you don't want. The lesson does take a while. It's a minimum of 2 full, like,
I take 2 full days to do it. And the best advice in that product was in the notes or the lesson that said, don't rush this, because I would have been tempted to do that with the lesson, as I would have said, oh, I can squeeze this into 40 minutes.
Right.
We just won't do book exchange. And no, you really can't do it in 40 minutes.
But it's not going to have the impact on the kids. Like, the kids really enjoy it. They love talking about themselves and what they like.
I found too, for elementary, I had to, oh, hello, Paulette.
Hi, Paulette.
I had to explain some of the things to 4th graders. It was the youngest I did this with. And explain some of the terms, like, you might be like this. And so, or I would add my own little comments into it to kind of keep it engaging and keep it going, keep it personal. And so, yeah, don't rush it. It takes 2 full days. And even then we sometimes ran out of time for book exchange. So
right. I get so many comments though about how the librarians will be like, oh, these kids, they said that's exactly me. That's exactly, and they said the teachers took it and they said the same. That's because it's based on real kids. Like, I've been doing this a long time. And I know what that, like, I don't even have to really give the genre personality test all the time, because sometimes I just know what that child's going to be. And I love to, when we're doing the test, guess, like, while they're taking it, I'll go, oh, I'll bet you, Benjamin, I'll bet you're putting an A on that one. Or I'll say, And then when we're going over the results, as we're going over it, like, I'll be on the erudite, and I'll say, now, I'm not going to ask who, but I think so-and-so is an erudite, and so-and-so, and they're like, you're right.
And isn't that a great testament that we know our students?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and they feel like really recognized. I think they feel seen when you can accurately guess a personality. But you will get to, after you really get to know those 12 personalities, you'll start identifying students without doing the test. So in your mind, when they're taking the quiz, you'll be like, oh, I know what you're gonna put. And it's designed too so that students can get more than one personality. They should really get more than one personality, unless they're really extreme and in like I did have a boy that would rank escapist. I think of him right now on every question. Most of them are going to be much more well-rounded, and they're going to have multiple genre personalities, which is why I asked them to do there's 12 answers in each question. I think there's 11 or 12 questions, and they're to put their top 3 or 4 choices, because that doesn't limit them to genre, where if their question it says like mystery, and like you might like nonfiction, historical fiction, whatever, but it doesn't limit them just to that. They might also be a comedian, and they might like, funny books and graphic novels and how to draw. So
I agree that forcing them to choose, I told my students, you have to choose 2 answers. 3 is better, 4 is better. No more than like 5. No, we're not going to do 5.
Right.
But like, I told them you cannot only pick one thing.
Right.
Because I said, and I would say, it's just not going to be fun. It's just
not
fun for you.
Right. Just pick what the best is. If it's not perfect, then
or like your top 3 answers.
Right.
And so, I was like, because you will like more than one thing. And so, I found that that is just such a fantastic lesson. I look forward to doing it.
That's a lot of fun.
Each of my classes. I'm about to do it again literally tomorrow. I'm going to do it with a 4th and a 5th grade class again tomorrow.
I think too that it needs to be done every year because students do change in their interests, and they may, a lot of times they will, if you do it from one year to the next, they will stay about the same, or they may change one of their personalities. But over time, they may change quite a few. So I did it every year. It was a lesson that the students always look forward to, and especially with the changes that I make every year, they look forward to the new changes. And that year that I added, it was 2020, I added 4 personalities actually, and I deleted 1, so it was 4 new. It was the erudite, the naturalist, the sports fan, and the artist. And that year that I did those 4, I thought I was going to die in June. It was so much work, but I couldn't just add 1. I had so many, and that's the thing. I have other ideas, and particularly the maker. Oh, and the traveler was one I wanted to do.
I think those are both really good ones.
I can't do
I will say the sports
When did you
fans, that
stop?
one is definitely one of the highlights. You know, when I tell the kids like you say you take your sports too seriously, and I tell them, I was like, you know, if you're a sports fan, there's no such thing. That one is like, that's when the kids are like, oh, that's definitely me.
And again, they feel very seen.
Yeah.
Oh, this is me. Yeah, she knows me. She's got it.
Yeah. And that reading is for them.
Yes.
Especially with the sports fans. I always feel like you have your team books, and those students often feel like the rest of the library is not, they're just not readers or something like that. In my school, that's a pretty common theme. And so to say like, yes, you are a reader, there are many things that you might like in our library. I think it's just so awesome to be able to broaden their horizons maybe just a little bit.
One of the personalities, the comedian, one of my favorite parts, I think that is my favorite genre personality, like just the way that I did it, because part of the description in the comedian is that they sometimes will say they don't like reading, but often it's because they're reading books that are too long, too boring, not something they're interested in, or too difficult. And I feel like those, because I based that one on my son, not only on my son, there were a lot of kids like that, but I know that my son is a great reader. He's dyslexic, but he does like to be read too. But reading something that's really dense or really just long or just not interested, it just doesn't happen. He really feels like he hates reading, but he doesn't hate reading. He just doesn't like that kind of reading.
He's just
So
reading
that's
the wrong
what
books.
Yeah. So again, it's just about those kids being seen and recognizing that they may not like reading, but that's okay. There's cures for that. There's things you can do. There's different kinds of books. Maybe you like graphic novels, or maybe you like origami books. They do. So
I'm sure I'm getting these quote wrong, but I'm reminded of, I believe it's James Patterson that says there's only 2 kinds of children in the world. There's children who love reading, and there's children who are reading the wrong books.
Right. Yep.
And so like if they think they don't like reading, it's because they're reading the wrong books, and and that's where the genre personality quiz comes into play. We're like, let's introduce you to other kinds of books. And so
I would say the same is true for adults. A lot of adults, most adults, don't read for pleasure. They read the internet and stuff, but they don't read books. And it would be the same thing. Like, they just found the right book. They would be. So.
Yeah. Or some adults that read nothing but true crime novels or biographies, historical biographies. Like they have one genre they settle on that, like, this is my jam. And yeah, I think, the adults are the exact same way. We all have our preferences, and
and that's another
have
thing.
those acknowledged.
Well, like with the genre personality, I don't just give them one genre. There's multiple genres they can choose from, and it may be some that they hadn't thought about, like short stories. And they're not just like the traditional genre that a library might be labeled with fantasy and mystery and science fiction, but they're things like, biographies about musicians or diaries and journals. And there's other kinds of things that I recommend to those students that they might not have thought about.
Yeah. So, well, all right. I know we spent a lot of time on that
one. Paulette asked, do you have any assessments that are highly qualified student data, HQSD? And I myself am not familiar with that term. I don't recognize that from Texas. Are either of y'all familiar with that term?
I'm also from Texas. I've never heard of it.
So in Pennsylvania, I did a super quick Google search. So this is simply off the cuff completely here. What I can see is that it's about using data to guide your instruction. Okay. I'm not a huge fan of this practice as a whole, as a personal pedagogical choice. However, I do know that I've been asked to do such things. And so if you're, it's not clear, and Paulette, maybe you might want to DM us or talk more about that. Um, whether is this something you have to do for every one of your lessons, or is this something that you can do with like a single class? When I've done data collection in that sense, then I have I picked one class, one grade level actually, and that's the area I was collecting data on, and then looking at that data. And what I did was I tried to keep it simple. I picked kindergarten, and I did parts of a book. So it was simply a checklist of can the student identify the cover, the spine, title, author, illustrator, those 5 bits. And then every time a student could show, I would hold a book and say, show me the title, show me like, so I would pull like 1 or 2 students per class. Or you could ask it at the checkouts circulation desk for something like that. Um, so like those kind of very specific data points. Lee, have you ever had to do anything like that or
I
done
have
any
not. And in China, I will
like that?
say that we didn't have, at least not in the library. I had a great deal of freedom to run the library, like do my own lessons and stuff. I did do a lot with like research and stuff like that because it was secondary, but I had a lot of freedom as well. And I didn't have to turn in anything like that. No.
Hmm.
Okay, so let us know in a comment, Paulette, more of what you're looking for, and we'll be interested to learn more about that because I'm not that familiar with it. So as we head toward wrapping up, we're just wondering, Lee, if there's anything else you'd like to share with school librarians, any advice, recommendations? What do you think?
Oh, thank you so much. And so I have on my blog a lot of articles, particularly for new librarians, but I really want to speak to new librarians because you guys have my heart. When I first started, I was, I had my library classes and all that. It's just like teaching though. You don't really know until you get in there and do it. And I can remember starting my first library and I was so excited. I'm looking around, taking a deep breath and going, what now? What do I do? Nobody can tell me what to do. There wasn't anyone to tell me what to do. And then teachers kept coming in and asking me questions that I didn't know anything about. Like, what are the database logins and what databases do we have? And I don't know. I don't know. I mean, so for new teachers, I would say that if you're, and I know we're quite a ways through the year, but if you're a new teacher coming up next, a new librarian next year, this will also work. You always just say, I don't know. Be honest, you don't know, but you'll find out. And let them know as soon as you're able to, because teachers respect that. They don't want you to, bluff and say, something.
Flake on them.
But it is hard for all of us. And I felt like when I got to China, even after had been in education 13 years, I felt like it was brand new. It was just completely a new world for me. And I'm thankful that I had at least the experience that I had, because some people would go in there with far less and be even more overwhelmed. So if you are feeling overwhelmed as a new librarian or an experienced librarian, you are not alone. I feel that when I'm in the library, I feel that too. So especially when you're in a new school, it can take a few years to get going. So just be easy on yourself, give yourself some grace, and you'll be fine. Just ask questions of other librarians. So yeah, that's my big advice.
So we do want to highlight, I shared there really quickly, Lee's website is readerpants.net. And you can look up the blog posts that she's mentioned. She has a really good one specifically on interview questions that are red flags or questions to ask when you're in an interview. We'll add these links into the comments after we wrap up here as well, so you can get the direct link. And if anyone is interested in shopping on the Librarians Teach shop, we have a whole category. It's right on the homepage of the shop, librariansteach.com. And it just says Mrs. ReaderPants. And so you can go and shop for all of the things we talked about today.
That name came from my son when he was 3. I started my blog in 2011, and he was really silly. He was 3 years old, and he was like, came dancing in the room, and he goes, "Mommy," because I was reading, "Mommy, you're such a reader pants." And I've been trying to think of a blog name that time. I was like, that's the blog name.
That's fantastic.
So that's where that came from. So,
Well, thank you so much for meeting with us and sharing with us.
anytime.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. It's fun.
Thanks so much, Lee.
All right, I think we're gonna sign off here. All right.
Okay.
Everybody take care and enjoy the rest of
Bye.
your Sunday.